another episode of the It's My Job podcast. It's been a little while since our last episode, but we are pleased to be back with episode number 12. I am a transition student from Colorado, and my teacher, Miss Dolly, is the podcast facilitator. Podcast features students interviewing adults that are blind or visually impaired. Important questions like how they use technology or how they connect with other people. Podcasts were designed by students for students. After the podcast, to learn how to get involved. Share with your friends and teachers so they can listen too. For today's interview, Annie, a retired family therapist, author, and poet. Her poetry are available on her website, www.ann.chiappetta.com. To my interview with Annie.
Alrighty, so what inspired you to become an author and a therapist?
Well, the answer to that goes back to when I first lost my vision. I needed to get a good education before I got a good career. So my rehabilitation included going back to school, first getting my high school diploma, and then going on to getting my college degrees. And when I was ready to go on to a master's program, I had a project in undergrad to interview a couple of people with careers that I might want to be interested in. And one of them was a psychologist from the VA, from the Veterans Administration. And she was blind, totally blind all her life. And she told me I could do what she was doing, or I could help people in other ways. So that's what made me pick the program that I picked to become a family therapist. You know, during that whole time in college is all about writing and all about presenting yourself and how you think and how you feel and your opinions and, you know, essays and lots of writing in college. So I just gravitated towards that. So in anything that I didn't study in terms of psychology, I studied in creative writing and literature. That's how those two things came together.
So what kind of degrees are needed for this job?
Very good question. So I am a professional marriage and family therapist. It is a licensed field in the mental health field. I'm not licensed, sorry to say. I didn't pass my test twice. I thought about taking it a third time, but then I retired from being a therapist, so it was kind of like silly for me to get a license when I wasn't going to practice anymore. But regardless of that, I do have a master's degree in marriage and family therapy. It's a master's of science degree from Iona College. I just want to help people, and I love hearing stories and staying connected. You know, I could have been a social worker. I probably could have gone on, you know, maybe become a psychologist, a PhD program. But I felt that at the time where I wanted to be was helping people one-on-one, face-to-face. And so that's what made me decide. Pick the degree program that I picked. At the time, marriage and family therapists were new, and we hadn't yet gotten all of the credentialing and stuff from state licensing boards and things like that. So it was also very exciting for me at the time. And this was way back in 2003, 2004. We were just kind of starting out being recognized as mental health professionals. So it was kind of exciting to be there in that first bunch of people learning and getting ourselves out there. So I was very happy I did that. Any master's degree program will really give you so much in terms of education and experience. And if there's an opportunity to do something like that, probably should do it.
What technology do you use daily?
Oh, okay. So I love technology. I'm kind of a geek when it comes to stuff like that. So a Windows laptop, it's a Dell laptop. It's cute little, and it's got lots of gigs. I have JAWS. I actually just upgraded this morning to JAWS 2021 because I have the renewable license. So, and I've been using JAWS since I got my first bunch of technology training back in the 90s. Come a long way. I started using Zoom text, and then my vision got so bad that I just transitioned over to JAWS. So JAWS, I have Kurzweil, Kurzweil and a scanner, and those are my two main things. I love my iPhone and my iPad. I use my iPhone and my iPad a lot, especially for Netflix and stuff like that, my iPad's great because I don't really need to see the screen, but I still want that ability to. I like the larger screen for stuff like Netflix because it's just easier to navigate. So that's my technology. I mean, I use a keyboard, an external keyboard instead of the laptop keyboard. It's just easier on my hands, try to avoid that carpal tunnel thing going on. I have my office, my desk. I have a private place that I can go and I can write. Right now, I do have dogs, and I made them lay down and be quiet so I can do this.
Yeah, that makes sense. So, what specific technology do you use in the job?
Oh, okay. So when I was working for the VA, I had a desktop computer, keyboard, and equipped me with all of the assistive technologies that I needed, with JAWS, with Kurzweil, a scanner. They also gave me a little voice recorder for conferences and things like that. If I wanted to record things, or I needed to do last minute notes and I didn't have a place like a note taker or something. So I had a Victor Stream for that. I also the VA uses IT phones that go through their computer servers. And so I managed to get an IT phone that was enabled with voiceover. So I was able to use it. So that was cool. Anything else?
Track of deadlines.
Oh, okay. So deadlines, like when I was working, deadlines were pretty much the kind of things that came down from like my director. We had a small office and we had 5 therapists, a director and an office manager. And, we would have, staff meetings or whatever. And we had a database that had a calendar in it and stuff. And, I was able to access that, manage my own appointments or have the office manager put my appointments in and things like that. So when you're in the workplace, it's kind of like, you just kind of flow into what's been already structured. You just learn how that is, and then you just go for it, in terms of your appointments for the day and things like that. Because we would see clients, then we would have, our breaks and our lunch, and then, an 8.5-hour day, 5 days a week kind of thing. So that was got into it. It was, pretty set. But when it comes to writing, you are your own boss. You set your own schedule. If you don't have like a publisher and you're independently published like me, it could be challenging. If you're naturally a structured person, then it would be easy for you to set a schedule and say, okay, I'm going to get up at 9 and I'm going to write from 9 to 11. And then I'm going to get up and, take a walk with the dogs, have some lunch, make a few phone calls, then go back to writing between 2 and 4, But if you're not a structured person, you're not used to that, that may be a challenge for you and it may not work for you. I would say, setting the deadlines with yourself probably is more challenging than if you have an outside influence, someone to say, here's your schedule, now do it. That's one thing. But when you're doing it for yourself, you really have to figure out how it works for you, how it works around the other things in your life. And then whatever you choose, however you do it, to try to do your best at repeating it, to make it a habit. Habits are important. Positive habits, good habits are important for success.
So, as a therapist, how can you discover people's emotions with limited sight?
I love that question, by the way. I read that question. I was like, oh, I love that question. It took time for me to be able to understand and learn. And what I've learned over time was that when you're in a room with somebody, it's usually quiet. You usually have that person with you, and you can focus all your attention on that person, how they're breathing, if they're fidgeting or not in their seat, because you could hear the chair move, whether their feet are, tapping, you can usually hear that, or whether they're sliding them back and forth under the chair, everything from the tone in their voice to whether they're sitting too still, because sometimes somebody who is sitting too still means that they're really anxious and they're really clenched. So over time, I've learned to listen, to use my sense of smell also. Sometimes people who are really, really anxious, there's just something about them that just sets my intuition off. Because being a therapist also is about being intuitive, about understanding how people behave, but also being able to kind of pick up on little things here and there, or go with a hunch. So it's a whole bunch of things, and it takes practice over time. Not being able to see doesn't mean you can't be a good therapist. When I was practicing, I was good, and I did help. And sometimes people came to me because I couldn't see. The population I worked with were veterans with trauma. I did trauma-informed therapy with these veterans, and some of their stories were extremely difficult for them to share. One veteran said to me, not being able to see him made it easier for him to tell me his story.
But it makes sense to me now why. So where do you find the inspiration for your poems?
Everywhere. Mostly people, experiences, dreams, pain, joy, anything. I mean, you can write a poem about just writing a poem about nothing. I started writing poetry as a way to learn how to understand how I felt about life and about things. Some of my early poems were like love poems, about, the guy that dumped me, or somebody saying hurtful things against me, or things like that. So, and I started writing poems when I was very young, when I was in middle school. So I was about 11 or 12, it just helped me understand myself better. I didn't necessarily want anybody to read them back then, that was like, having a journal kind of thing. And then I wrote a couple of things while I was going through my rehabilitation after losing my vision. I was married. I'm married to a veteran, by the way, and he was standing by and getting whether he was going to be deployed for the first Desert Storm back in 1991. And I was pregnant, and I had a lot of things to think about. So I started writing poetry, then, to help me kind of express myself and get all those thoughts out. And that's how it started. A lot of that stuff was very helpful for me therapeutically. I still believe in that. I believe that, writing is a tool to help people with whatever they need help with at the time. It's a way of expression. So that's how it started, and that's how I keep going. I just keep, if something significant happens in my life or in the world around me, I will try to write it, and that's how a poem starts.
That's amazing.
Thank you.
So, with what challenges were you faced when you used to work as a therapist, and what challenges are you facing now as you're working as an author? How did you overcome these challenges?
Therapist challenges. Of course, any challenge that I had becoming a therapist was probably, mostly due to not being able to see, visual impairment. In college, I was always met with barriers, the materials not being accessible, or the college campus being difficult to travel with, on things like that, transportation to and from school, and also finding childcare for my children while I was going to college. My vision. I have RP, and over time it got worse and worse and worse. And while I was going to college, my vision changed significantly from when I started to when I finally graduated, and that the constant adjustment was a drain. Often left me feeling very, very sad and just very frustrated. So those were some of the challenges, just going to school, and then, going and getting employed, finding somebody to help me find jobs and internships and things like that. Those were challenges as well, but I had good people who helped. I asked for help, and I often received it. And that often got me to my next step. In terms of my writing life, some of the challenges too are, all about access to technology, and finding the right people to help. I have a great team of people who, it's called DLD Books. They're book preparation services, and they're not publishing. They're not a publisher, but they help with everything from the, line editing the manuscript to choosing your cover and uploading your book so you can get it on Amazon, or but it's challenging. Everything you do, no matter what you choose as a career path or your education, there's going to be challenges if you have a person with a visual impairment, or just a person with a disability. We are faced with these barriers over and over, and we just part of the process living living in this age and time.
I can agree with that one.
Yeah.
What advice would you give to a younger audience that wants to become a therapist or an author?
Oh, great question. Well, for the therapist part, of course, don't give up on your dreams and your goals. Keep them, in your head, and keep them, up at the top. So don't ever give up on what you want to do in life. That would be number one. Number two would be make sure you get your education, and don't be afraid to ask the people who are educating you, your professors, your advisors. Make them your best friends. Make sure that you get your needs taken care of, whatever they might be, in whatever situation you're in. Your person with a vision impairment, we do need to reach out and ask for help sometimes. It can be difficult, but there are people out there trained to help, to find the right people. Everything from, your state agency, maybe advocacy groups like ACB or NFB. And when you're in college, especially, there might be the disability advisor, or a resource room professional, whatever you need. Make sure that you get it, because that's just going to make you stronger, get you to your goal in a better way, and don't give up. It's hard. When I was looking for a job after I had my master's degree, I felt so great, and it took me like 2 years to find a job. And sometimes it got to the point where I just wanted to give up, but I didn't. And I did get a great job. So just don't give up. And the writing thing, the same thing. I would say, don't think that you're going to become, you're going to be able to support yourself on being a writer. Only the very lucky people. So I would say, make your writing something that would supplement your income, but maybe not pay the bills directly. Always have that career goal. Like when I was a therapist, it paid the bills, and my writing was something I did just as a hobby or to reach out to other people in different ways. But my writing was never something that I was going to be able to survive on my own with, in terms of an income. It's just difficult field to be in writing. You're probably better off becoming a therapist. At least, being a therapist, you can get a license, you can be hired by an agency and things like that. When you're a writer, unless you're one of those journalists that we see and we hear every day, or you're Stephen King, it's really hard to make. Being a writer is more about my creative expression as a person and as an individual, and how I make connections with other people. So being a writer is in my heart all the time. It's just part of me, who I am.
I think that's a wonderful piece of advice. Would you like to recite a poem for us?
Oh, sure. Yeah. So this poem is called Verona, and it's about getting my first guide dog. I wait for the knock. Once it comes, my life will change forever. Since I arrived, for 2 days and nights, for my entire life until now, I've waited, unprepared, searching. I sit on the bed, wondering how it will feel an hour from now, and go numb with nerves. Questions scroll across the marquee of my mind. What will she be like? Will she like me? Learn to love me? The hot red letters of doubt scroll past. Can she guide me? Will I be able to trust her? Then the knock comes and my heart jumps. Come in, I say, hoping I can open my heart with as much ease as the door. I hear her nails click on the floor. I put out a hand, touch her head. She licks me, tail wagging. Anne, this is Verona, the trainer says. I don't really know what to say or how to feel, but her presence soothes me. Aren't you a beautiful girl, I say. We sit on the floor together. The marquee of doubts vanishes. The blocky red letters fade, replaced by a message of calm canine acceptance dressed in ebony. She settles her head in my lap. Each stroke of my hand strengthens the hope, quiets the fear. The questions dissipate with the knowledge, stroke by stroke, that she is the one who will lead me. January 2009. The end.
Wow.
Thank you.
Awesome.
That's beautiful.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Now, and you have any questions for Jose? It's time to change that a little bit.
Yep.
What do you, where you live, maybe, what your goals are. I would like to know a little more about you. That would be great.
Well, I live in Denver, Colorado. I would love to become a radio DJ.
Now with technology and everything, it's something that that you can do just like everybody else, you know?
Yeah.
So give me some of your favorite music. Like,
Well, I am not picky. I like all kinds of music.
I guess that's good. That's good.
If I had to choose, I would say oldies.
Yeah? Oh, why? Tell me why you like the oldies.
The reason why I like the oldies is because I've done a lot of compare with really old songs up to like new stuff. Oldies sound a lot better than what they're coming up with nowadays.
Yeah. I love all music too, and I grew up listening to classical music with my dad, and then the 70s and the 80s, and I'm an 80s child, totally.
Well, I just want to say I really want to thank you for taking your time and doing this interview with me today.
You're welcome. I mean, yeah, no problem. I would love to hear how you're doing.
Right. Thanks. I really appreciate it.
You're welcome. Yeah.
Hi, this is Jose again, and thanks for listening to the last episode of the It's My Job podcast. What do you think? You like poems? Love to hear from you. Let us know what you think by phone or email. If you have questions for Annie, we would be happy to pass them along. We might share your questions and answers in a future episode of It's My Job podcast. Email address is askitismyjob@gmail.com. No spaces and no apostrophe. You can find us on Facebook. Just search for It Is My Job. Also on the Perkins Path for Technology blog. And leave a comment channel. You will find all of our podcasts. Facebook or YouTube to hear Laura from New York learn from Jenny as a singer, songwriter, author, and speaker.
Thanks.
The Perkins Path for Technology blog.
Thanks.
So much to Annie for sharing her time as our interview was facilitated by my teacher, Miss Christine Dully.
Thanks.
Miss Dully for providing students opportunities to future careers.
Thanks.
To Perkins Path for Technology, where the blog post
Music.
is from purpleplanet.com. So many of us working and studying from home. Podcast is becoming a great opportunity for the other raise awareness about all the amazing jobs by people who are blind or visually impaired.